G'day YouTube, JB from Oz here. So this is just a really quick tool time update. As you'll remember, I showed you these cups last time. I started to put them to use with the black smelly smoky stuff as per Bruce's recommendation. And on the lathe I commenced making a quill lock for the wrong foo. Essentially, this spring's the wrong size, so I'll get another spring, but with the combination of the handle and the gap and a spring to keep them apart when they're not connected, I'm aiming to improve the ability to lock the quill up so I can get some better measurements on the Truline 8, Bruce's product from Gemtrek, because there was at least 5/10 movement in the quill in itself before we even started looking at the movement of the quill to the table. So that'll take out one of the variables in my measurements. Yeah, so that was quite nice. My first imperial threading job on the lathe. Had a few issues. However, I managed to get a piece of high-speed steel recently with a decent parting grind on it, and that just chewed through the material like there was nothing in the way. I've also started to use the carbides that I picked up last time from that supplier to mean that my tools are now lower down on centre. So I've used insert tooling to cut those threads. I had an issue with clearance on this part of the tool, essentially hitting the live centre. When I came back, I couldn't get in close enough. So I expect that I'll probably take a grinder to that and just relieve that from the centre so I can get in a bit closer with that tool. What else have we got to show today? The backhoe business recently. You'll notice that I started with a very small 2-inch, what's that, 14-inch length monkey wrench. We then moved up to the 18, which ended up failing on us. That was a Taiwanese 18. I recently got the next two, which I was planning to try. Which is a lovely pair of 24-inch. This one is Fuller brand, that one is Izeltus. So Fuller is a Japanese brand, Izeltus is, I don't know, forged chrome vanadium. So, if they don't work, Bruce was kind enough to offer me the use of this. So this is a 48-inch, which, if that nut doesn't clear with this, something's seriously wrong. So that's the plan for that one. Alright. Also on Matters Bruce, we applied his branding onto the Truline 8 on my machine, which I'll be fitting back on. And once I've got the quill lock, I can do some more measurements and accuracy tests. So that's coming along. What else have we got? Okey-dokey. I saw quite an interesting piece this week, which I'll put a photograph of here. It's a 1/2 inch to 1.5 inch vernier micrometer. Yeah, somebody suggested today they might have used it for measuring cams on engines or something. If you need to have that working range at the 1 inch and don't want to have to be changing between mics, sounds like a reasonable idea. Cheap set of thread wires. I found when I was milling this up, or cutting that thread, I didn't have an accurate reference, so got those sent across. Tool finds. Managed to find a lovely Starrett Centre Finder set, brand new, still in packet. So that made its way home with me. Quite happy, thank you very much. Brown and Sharp Plano Shaper Gauge. Those who watch me on Facebook will see I've had a bit of a conversation around this. Quite a neat tool. And Stan Zinkowski and Tom at Ox Tools have both had videos recently on the use and also the refurbishment of this same tool. Number of different ways it can be used. This rod or dowel is a machined surface, so that can be pinned here, here or here. The sliding arrangement means that you can measure a gap or a height down this low up to that height, down this low up to that height, down this low up to that height, and then with the addition of the spacer block, additional heights above that. So you can set a height or a gap from one surface to the other, typically on a shaper or a planer, where you're wanting to set your tool to a specific height above the work table. There's also this little piece, which is a, I suppose you'd say a marking face. So again, you could put that on the side of the tool, set a known height, and then use that as a marking gauge or a transfer gauge. The use that I'm most likely to use it for initially is as a lathe center height gauge. Just leave it set to the center height of my lathe so that I can quickly place that on the cross slide and just check my center height of my tools, because I've only got 3 of these at the moment. That's the only tools I've got for the Multifix A, so I'm trying to save up for probably another 5 or 10 of these. There's a company in somewhere that sells them for about 40 bucks each, so yeah, trying to slowly save the pennies up for that. Cool, so very interesting tool, very handy tool, and it will be initially being used just to set the center height of my lathe. Another quick and dirty. This tool is a gear measuring vernier. So you have a sliding wedge and a gap so that you can measure the gap between teeth on a gear and a depth of a gear, so that when you're trying to make another gear of the same specification, you've got a reference to check that you've machined deeply enough. And that would have been very handy when we were doing the gear cutting on the shaper. This is a lovely Swiss tool, which again managed to find its way home with me this week. You've seen me dig around in my pile of drills, and at the time recently I came across a set of letter drills. These ones second hand but never used. These ones are Dormer drills, and this one is a set of Sutton number drills, 1 through 60. Again, hardly or if at all used. So very fortunate to come across those in the find. Another little item which I don't know if or how much use I'm actually going to give on it is this kit. Now this is a nutsert or a nut rivet inserting kit. Essentially range of M3, 4, 5 and 6. You have a nut rivet that you put through sheet metal and then you pull up behind, essentially giving you a screw point for a nut into a piece of sheet work. It's pulled up using this tool, which essentially squeezes it like a rivet into the sheet metal and clamps it in place. And I'm expecting initially to probably use this on the backhoe, which uses a lot of nutserts around the various sheet metal components. Typically they rust out and then the nutserts are buggered, so you just drill them out and you can insert a new nutsert without having to deal around with other types of inserts or key lines in sheetwork in panels. So yeah, probably won't get much use, but when I do need to use it, it's a very nice kit for that. Following on from the rubber that Stan was showing on his channel, this is not the same, this is just some flat insertion rubber. I'm looking to put these just to protect my ways on the lathe, so they'll be prepared and used sometime soon. And the last but not least is this. I was fortunate enough to receive a Duresta stencil direct from Barzi Summer Bash, where Bruce Witham was displaying the Truline 8 and also meeting and greeting and representing Australia. So yeah, a little bit of haggling and so forth, and he was good enough to let me, I'm going to say, take this home on permanent loan, but it might just be pretty permanent. So thank you very much, Bruce. Thanks for watching. Until next time, stay safe and keep up the good work. Just a quick view here now. I made my first use of the power hacksaw, cutting us a piece of stock. Here I am starting to turn it down to size, and once we've got the first size down, we're starting to then reduce down to the size for threading. Here we're using the ruler trick to try and set center height on the lathe. From the front you can see that same again. One of the issues I had with the insert was the clearance to the live center was really close, so I had trouble getting the end of the thread set. Here's a bit of a dome at the end, but I got there in the end. And the final trick was doing some parting off, and this is the high-speed steel. Which parted off quite nicely. And here we are, just doing a test fit and preparing to mount up on the Rongfu. I've got one final operation to cut the bevel in and a quick tidy up in the lathe, and it's ready for next time. Thanks heaps for watching.